Hey guys, my name is xOctoManx and this is part 4 of my nation and character select system, which has been a request of my patron. So yeah, let's get started. In this part we are going to create the saving and loading possibility. So we need to store the nation we have selected. We need to store the color we have chosen, and we also need an input field where we can actually store the player name. And I will go over and store that for data types, and of course the car we have chosen, or the character in this case, and we need to store that information into player prefs. Okay, so let's get started. At first I need to create, or I want to create that input field where I have the possibility to enter a name, and then I need to create some scripts to handle all that different inputs. Okay, so the first one is I go to my canvas into nation input 1, for example. And what I have in here is, again, all that color stuff we just created in the last part. And over that, I want to create a new panel or input field so I can show and see that and use this. So what I do is I create a new by right-clicking on UI and use input field. This input field at first will land somewhere in the nation input canvas. So, but we can easily take that input field, change this to rect transform, and then we can easily just select that and should be able to place this wherever we want to, like this. And I center this one out, and instead of the enter text I can input anything else, like for example choose driver name. So you go to the placeholder and type in a choose driver name or whatever you like. You can also go in and change again to best fit. You can increase the size, and of course you can increase the whole input field size, so everything will become a bit bigger, for example. So make sure that you fit that to your needs. And the second one, where the text is in, is currently empty. So when the player is going to enter something in that, then this will be inside of that. So I want to make sure that this is the same size as my placeholder. So you just drag that around and you can easily clamp that to the particular outlines. Okay. Also in here we can enter in the best fit option. So when somebody is going to enter its name in there, then it will be in the best fitting size. So keep this one blank, don't need to do any inputs in there, and also we don't need to do any changes basically into the input field script. So what I also want to do is I want to duplicate that input field and place the duplication of that in input 2 of nation 1, nation 2 input. So if I enable this one and disable this one, I will have also the same name as that position. Now, since we have that input fields, we also want to create a start button, so we are able to start the game and save the data when we are pressing on that particular button. So I just create a new UI button, and again it will be centered automatically into the canvas size or in the panel size, but I just go over and drag this one out there and maybe place this in the center of this point. I can also go over and increase the size to the button size we have over here. And whoops, not this one. And I can also go in and check if this fits the size maybe of that other button, and I just go over and drag this to the other side. So basically this panel over here is not needed, as you may already know from the last part. I changed the text from button to start, for example. Also I want to again enter best fit, so it will automatically will be the best fitted size, maybe like this. Okay, so let's get started with saving. At first I'm gonna copy in the canvas that start button in here. Gonna rename this pretty quick. You can also call this one save button, it doesn't really matter. So this start button needs also be publicly or duplicated again for the nation1 input panel, so this will also be available at that point. Gonna enable the main panel once again. So in the start we have just the start game thing in here, and we can go over and do all the things we need. So let's create a save game or a save data script. So I can also call this one a save load data, since it will have both informations inside, the saving or the data to save and data to load, since saving is not much but loading will be a bit more code heavy. So what I do is I shrink everything a bit down in here, and I want to create a new empty game object, and this is going to be my game manager. You can call this whatever you want again, and what I want to do is I want to put the save and load data script onto the game manager object. Later on I can also go over and create a prefab out of this, but for now it is not needed. So what I want to do is I open up MonoDevelop right now, and then we can start off with coding. Okay, so what do we need in here is, at first I will use or need a lot of lists and stuff, but what we don't need is, we don't need update for this, since we will create our own functions again in here. So the first one is I want to save data. So I create a small save function which is going to do all that stuff for us, and I call this one save info, for example, or anything else, or just go over and name this one save or save data. Okay, so what we need is, at first we need some variables. We can pass in parameters or names, and then we can store all that data and later on read that data. So the first one, as I already said, is a string of type, or a public string, and I call this one just nation. So this is the first string we want to save. The second string is going to be public string, and this is going to be our driver name. We want to know what driver name has been chosen. Then again another string, so public string chosen car. So we save which car we have chosen. I should just rename them like this. And the last one is going to be the color. So public of type color, and I call this one just car color, for example. So these are the 4 things we want to store in the player prefs. So in our public void save info, I want to say player prefs dot set string, since we have strings to store. The first one is going to be the name and nation, so make sure it's also a nation. This is going to be the key. We need the key to access later on the information it is in, or which is in, and what we store is the nation, which is the variable we just created. So, and for saving something, that's just it. You don't need to do anything else if you don't have anything complex or stuff you need to protect in any way. Then this is more than enough you need. So the next one can be color or driver name. So I just call it driver name. And this is going to be the driver name written in small letters, and the line. Oh, let me zoom in a bit. Okay, the next one is player prefs.setString, and in here we take the chosen car. So we say maybe car, comma, chosen car. Okay, and the last one is going to be the color, which is the most intense stuff later on in reading the data out of it. I'm going to show you why. So I call this one just, let's say just color, comma, and what we do is we take, what do we call this one? Car color. So we store the car color in that. But we cannot store the car color in that like a string as a normal, since it is of type color, so we need to convert this to a string. So we say car color dot to string, and we open and close brackets after that. Don't forget to save the script. So this is everything we need to know or need to do for saving in its basic. What we also need to do is we need to make sure that we can load all that data later on, and make sure that we can reuse that data when we are reading this.
So to get the color later on, I'm gonna need a new color. I need some new variables in here. So the first one is going to be of type string, and this is going to be string underscore color. So I will show you that in a second why. And of course something of type color and the saved color. That is going to be needed to store the saved color and use it later on to tint all the objects we need. So next, we want to load info later on. So when we are loading, for example, the car color to anything, then we want to make sure that we can read the string data and convert that back into a color. Otherwise, we would have serious problems. So what I want to do is I want to say public void load info. And in load info, we need to take that color string, that's what we're doing at first, and again, convert this back to a readable color. And how can we do that? At first, we need to save the take the saved color string and save that into the string color, because it is a string already. So what we do is we say string color is going to be equal to player prefs dot getInt get string, I'm sorry, and the string we want to take is going to be the color, of course. So again, in quotes, color. So we take color and save that in string color. I'm gonna debug that for pretty quick, so you see what's happening when you save a color as a string. I just give out string underscore color. So you can see what it is going to do. So in start, when we are starting the game, I want to call at first a save info. We don't do that later on. That's just for debugging purposes right now. And then I want to load info. So I can load the string color we have just chosen or whatever. And then we debug that so we can see this one better. Let's go back to Unity. Game Manager is already in here, so save data or save load data will be active. So I press play, and in the debugging console, or in the console, you will see an RGBA, then in brackets, and then all the RGB alpha values in there, and in between there are commas. So this is the whole string which is stored as it is in the player prefs. So, but a color only consists of those 4 types of colors without the commas and without the brackets and without the RGBA in front of it. And that's what we need to take and get rid of. So I'm gonna delete that, and I also gonna delete that stuff in here. And now we go over and replace all that informations with nothing left. So how we do that is, at first, again, we take string color, and again, we can always go in and debug that step by step so you can see what it's going to do. Maybe we're gonna do that so it's easier for you to understand. So I'm gonna take those 2 functions and make like that. And in the very end, always go and debug.log str underscore color. So what we want to do is, at the next step, is we want to remove RGBA and all the brackets. So what we do is we say str underscore color is going to be equal to str underscore color dot, and now we have several possibilities in here, and what we want to do is we want to replace something, an old string value and a new string value. What we write is in quotes RGBA and an open bracket. Then we say a comma, and then we want to replace this first stuff with with nothing, then not even a space, with just nothing. Anyways, let's get rid of all of that stuff. So this is the first stuff we were just getting rid of. Then the next one is going to be a bracket at the very end. So we again go into that string underscore string color is going to be equal to string underscore color dot replace, and in here we want to replace the close bracket of all of that things in there, and we want to replace it with nothing left.
Okay. So now we have taken the header away and those two brackets away. The next thing is we need to split the numbers in between. So to get individual numbers, and we need to store them in a string array. So we create a new string array, call this one just strings, and this is going to be equal to string. No, not string. It's going to be underscore color dot split. So we split the string. And what do we want to split is, as you can see, there's a separator where the separator is going to be the comma between those guys, or that numbers, and in there then we say brackets 0 or square bracket 0. Okay, so now we have splitted all that strings. We're gonna create a new color, and call this one output color. This is just to split all of that stuff, and we set that at the very beginning to output color is going to be equal to color dot black, for example. This is just a placeholder, nothing special. So what we now do is we loop through all those particular color or through that color strings, and fill in the correct colors into the output color. Okay, so for int I is going to be equal to 0. Then we say semicolon I smaller 4. So it will count up to 3. So between 0 and 3, of course. This is all the numbers we have in the strings integer, or in the strings array. And while that is so, we increment I, of course, as we always do for that part. And in that for loop, we fill in output color numbers. So we say output color, and in square brackets I dot, and since it's a color, we can just access that thing with that array. And what we give is, we say system, no, it's not dot, it's going to be equal to system dot parse, I believe. No, system dot single dot parse. System single dot parse, and this is going to be the strings in square brackets I. Though we parse in the data from the strings, which already has the splitted values inside, and put all the data into the output color I. So from this part we are actually done, but I also want to make sure that I take that output color and store that into saved color. So saved color is going to be equal to output color at that point. After that, we're gonna go and create some more stuff in here, or actually, take another action, especially creating the cars and so on. So for creating the cars, we need to create a new small class which is holding all that information we can fill in by hand, and then go through all of that information we have in there and recolor all the instantiated stuff when we are loading the scene, for example. So a new public class of type, I don't know, create cars, or with the name create cars. And in that class, we just need or use two variables, or basically one variable and one list. The first one is going to be the of type game object, so it's going to be public game object, and this is going to be our car prefab we can load. And so this is going to be this one, which is getting compared with the saved car name and then we instantiate the right one with that information. So we go later on through all that, through the whole class and through the whole list, and loop through all of them and check if that's the right or the wrong one. And since we are creating lists, of course, we're gonna use the namespace system.collections.generic. Whoops, generic, like this. And now we can use the list, of course, in here too. So we create a new list of type GameObject. So again, in the triangle brackets, GameObject. And this is going to be the list of our tintable objects for that particular character or car or whatever. And we create, of course, a new list of type GameObject. And that's it for the class. Also, we want to make sure that this class is going to be serializable, so we can use and fill in data into the inspector. So we say system and square brackets system.serializable. And under that, I want to create a new list of create cars, or of type create cars. So we say public list of type create cars. And I call this one create car, and this is going to be equal to new list of create cars. Okay, that's it. Don't forget to save. So what we do now is we create a new function for this to create actually the car we actually want to instantiate later on. So we say again, oh no, this does not need to be public. That's going to be void, and we just call this function create the car. In your case, it might be a character or whatever it is. So what we do is, again, we loop through the whole car list and see how many we have. So, and what's in actually. So we say for int I is going to be equal to 0, a semicolon, I smaller create cars, which is going to be create car, which is a list, dot count, so we know the length of that list, and we say we increment I while we are looping through all of that stuff. So what we want to check is if create car and in square brackets I, so the loop through dot car prefab dot name. So the name of the car's prefab we are in is going to be the same as the player prefs dot get string, and which is the car. I believe we need to check if that is the right one. Yeah, which is this one, the chosen car actually, which is we get the string of the chosen car and compare that with the currently looped through car prefabs. And when we have found the correct one, the one which is the one we want to instantiate, then we go and do so. So we say we create a new game object and say this is going to be our new car. This can be your new character or whatever, as I said before. And now we can go and instantiate that at any position we want. But at first we want to know, what do we instantiate? We want to instantiate create car in square brackets I dot car prefab. So we want to take that specific car prefab. And whoops, not that. And we want to instantiate this one as a game object, of course. So we typecast this one, so type that behind that. Otherwise you have serious problems later on. Also, you can always go in and say you want that at a specific position, like a spawn point in your whole world map or whatever. This is up to you where you want to instantiate that thing or your character. In my case, I want to instantiate this one at vector3.0. So at the zeros world position with its original rotation. So this is going to be the quaternion dot identity. Oops, identity like this. Don't forget to save. But the next thing is I need to rename my car, my newly instantiated one. So I say new car dot name is going to be equal to create car I dot then the car prefab once again a dot name. So the name of the prefab should also be the instantiated name, otherwise I cannot or may not be able to find this name later on. Actually, you don't need to do that, since we also have the possibility to use the tag system to get the right colors onto the right car or character or whatever. So, but if you're using names or searching by names, then you need to rename your character. So depending on what you are taking or using later on, it depends on the names or on the tags. If you use tags, you don't need to rename your character or your car or whatever you're using. And once we have renamed our newly instantiated car, we of course want to make sure that we are able to tint all the particular objects which are stored later on in the tintable objects list in our class. So we need to loop through that once again. We say if in the for loop, again we need to loop through all of that stuff. But since we already used int I, we take just j in this case. So if we start at 0 with the j, so we say for int j is going to be equal to 0, while j is smaller than create car in square brackets I dot tintable objects dot count, so the length of the tintable objects in that list. Then we want to increment j. Yep. So, and while we are looping through that, we want to find all the game objects. Again, we can also use the tags, which might not that heavy as finding a game object, but let me just create it like this. So what we do is we go through all the game, or at least we want to find the first game object in the whole world, which has a specific name. And again, we say game object dot find. And what is the game object we want to find? It's going to be create car in square brackets I dot tintable objects in square brackets j dot name. Then we need to convert that back to a game object. So we say dot game object. Then we want to get its component, which is the mesh renderer component. So in triangle brackets mesh renderer. In here we want to take the material. Oh, we forgot the open close brackets. The material. And then in there we also have the color. And we want to set this particular color to our saved color. The saved color is this one which we took from the output color in here. Okay, and that's everything we need to do. Again, the tags are working kind of the same. We take or find all the tags, and then depending on whatever we have tagged that, we can also use tags. So we don't need to rename that. I'm gonna show you this one, how you can create this one too. For using the tag system, it would be a bit different to handle all that things around, and we don't need to go through the whole tintable objects stuff. So what I can do is I don't need to rename the car prefab, which is just going to get instantiated, and I also don't need to loop through the tintable objects. For now I'm gonna toggle the command, so I command this one out and will show you how you can actually use the tag system instead. So there are two ways once again. So what we do is at first we need to create a game object array. Whoops. To store all that information we're gonna find, and I just call this game object array just tagged. So what I want to do is I want to say tagged is going to be equal to game object dot find game objects with tag. So yeah, game objects with tag. So more of them in the scene, or might be more of them in the scene. Then what I want to do is I want to find the correct tag. In my case, I'm gonna call this one tint me, for example, or anything else. You decide what you want to tag them, and then we loop through the whole tag stuff with a for loop once again, or you can also use a for each loop. It doesn't really matter, but for each can be troublesome sometimes. So what we say, for int j is going to be equal to 0, so we start at 0 as we always do, or almost always do. So while j is smaller
then a tagged dot length. So the length of the array we just created, we want to increment j. And then in the for loop again, we want to tint all of the game objects we just find. So we say tagged in square brackets j dot game, or get component, and in this case it's going to be again the mesh renderer and all the other things behind that, what we already wrote over here from this point on. So we say dot material dot color is going to be equal to the saved color. This might not be that resource heavy than the game object find possibility, since if you have, I don't know, 30,000 game objects in your scene, it could have, or might take a while until everything has been found. So let's try the tagged possibility in here. For the tagged possibility, we need to tag all the game objects, but we don't need to fill in tintable objects in the new list over here. We only have the list for the car prefabs in here. Okay, so let's save that information for now. And of course, I wouldn't need it to create an extra class for this one, so I could also use an easy list and do or put in all the car prefabs. So I didn't need to use that, a class in this case. So let's get back to Unity and see what we can do in here. So what we can see is on the right side we have a create car list. We can increment that to 3 in my case, since we have 3 cars. Oh no, not 30, just 3. And those car elements can hold all my car prefabs I want to have in my game. And if I have more, like 4 or 7 or 100, depending on the nation and all the other things, then I want to make sure that I have them inside. So at first what I want to do is I want to create 3 prefabs out of my cars, bus and trucks. But since there's some weird scaling problem later on, I want to duplicate them first. So I'm gonna Control D, drag them outside so they don't have the problems with all the scaling on them. I can also go over and move them around so I know and see that there are no problems with them. Then I go to the game manager once again and drag them all into the prefab list. But before I do that, I create prefabs directly out of them. So what I do is I take that truck and put that into a prefabs folder. Same with the car, same with the bus. If the bus is renamed, you can also, or you don't need to take care of that, but just for the sake of competition, I rename that to LP bus. And I can also I also have to rename that directly in the prefab itself when I change that inside the prefab. So now everything should be fine. Now I'm gonna get rid of those 3 already created prefabs. Again, they have everything we have just done before with them. They don't need anything except all the mechanics later on we need for the specific cars or for your characters. Then you will have all the infos on them. Okay, so with that set up, I can go to the game manager right now and drag in all the prefabs, no matter where in that places. I just drag them inside of that, and now I can easily go over and save all that input data. But before we can save everything, we need to create a small input field script so we can also read the data for the driver name. So let's do that pretty quick first and then go over and do the last the whole setup. So what I do is I go again back into my scripts folder, create a new C# script and call this one input name. So I don't have everything in the save or game manager in this case. So later on again I can take all that info and also make a prefab out of the game manager. So this will be or will hold later on all that informations. Okay, so again, this game object will be needed, or actually the save load data script is needed
in two places. Again, at first here in this scene, so we can fill in the data and save and load and save all the data we need. And in the new scene, then we need that to read out all the data. We can also split all that information, but it doesn't need to. Okay, so open up the input name script in MonoDevelop or Visual Studio, and in here we're gonna create some new variables. And we need also a reference to our save load data script. So at first we say we create that reference, and we call this one, or this is of type save load data, and I just shorten this by SD or SLD, it doesn't matter. So SD is going to be my reference to the save load data script. I can also go in and make this one public and drag this the information later on in, but I can also go into start and say SD is going to be equal to GameObject.find. So I go over and find the game object which has all the informations, and this is in my case going to be the game manager. Make sure that you have no typos, so otherwise you might not find it and we'll get another reference or whatever. So I want to get the component out of it, which is the save load data file, and that's it. So we have the reference or the connection directly to the save load data script, and we can pass in all parameters we want. So the first one is going to be a public string, and this is going to be the driver name. So our driver needs a name, we want to name that, but I also want to make sure that when there is no inputted data, then I want to set a standard name, so or a basic name. So if the player has no or don't like to add a name, then we can set this one to anything, like for example player 1. So, and we will take care of that in just a second. What we do is we also need the connection to the input field directly. So we say public, and this is of type input field, and input field again is of type or needs the namespace. Whoops. Unity engine.ui. Otherwise we again don't have access to input fields. So now we can say input field, or input field. It's going to be I don't know, driver name field. I don't know. Okay. So now we know that we have stuff to fill out and read data from. So we don't need update for this. So we create our own function, and this is going to be a public function since we need to access it from outside, from a button, for example. So we say public void set name. And in set name, we can now pass in all the input field parameters and send them directly to the save load data script. So what we do is at first we want to check if there is any text in the driver name field, so in the input field. And so we say if a driver, if a driver input, driver name field is going to be driver input field dot text is going to be equal to nothing. So nothing has been inside except that quotes. Then we want to set the driver's name in the save data file to our standard name. So we say sd dot, and in here we get the driver name is going to be equal to the standard name, like this. And since both are string variables, we don't have to need to take care of anything else. So, and the next one is else. So if that is not the case, so the player has done any input, then we want to take the driver name, and this is going to be equal to the driver name field dot text. And then we go over and store that data into the save data script, or save load data script. So we say in this case, again, the driver name is going to be equal to the driver name, like this. So now we have all the stuff for the input field. Later on, for reading the data, we also, or for loading the data, we don't actually need that part of the script, since we can read the data directly from the player prefs at any point. Okay, so don't forget to save that script, and let's set up all the scenes and stuff so it already goes and work. I will create a small button in here and will show you that is everything working, and you later on just need to go and instantiate your car, your character at your position whenever you want. Okay, so what we need to do is at first we go to the canvas and in where we have our input fields, and I take the nation1 input, which is just that small. Let me just show you that. It's just that small square basically. Gonna go to 2D mode, which is even if it's not needed. But what I want to do is I want to drag the input name script and put that directly on that small, on our nation1 input stuff. What we need now is the driver name field, which is the name or the input field in here. So I just go over and drag this in. Nothing else needed, just drag that stuff in. When I go and press the start button on that particular field, in here I want to add a new on-click event. And this on-click event will store all the data from our save file or from our game manager in here. What we do is, before we can actually save something or load something later on, we need to make sure that in the load info, in our save load data, we also call create the car. So where I have my commanding out in here, just load or actually start create the car. So that also means we need to tag all our stuff with tintme. So let's just do that at the very beginning. Go to the prefabs folder into our LP bus, and as you can see, LP bus is not tagged with anything. So later on, when you are driving around or creating your games and stuff, don't make the error or the failure to use the prefabs directly. Use empty game objects, and then you can always go over and tint and rename all that stuff, and also tag the correct game objects. Since your basic game object might be tagged with player, but not the meshes under that. So make sure you do that properly. Anyway, so what we do is we go to add tag and add the tag tintme, as I already wrote this down. So make sure you have no typos in here. That's pretty much important. And then go to that and we say tintme to all my chassis. But I don't want to tint my my wheels in this case, so they don't get any tag. Only that stuff what I want to tint. If there is anything else on them, like, I don't know, a crane or whatever, then I can also tag that if I would like to. So again, you can tag as many as you want, and everything tagged with that will get tinted when it's got instantiated. Okay, so with that start button, once again, we have now tagged all of the informations we want to. We can now call the game managers, drag in the game manager as a game object and go to save load data. And what we want to do is we want to save info. We also need to do something different or some extra stuff to all our other parts, like the rotation script, for example. So we feed in all the data into the game manager or save manager, however you want to call this. Like, for example, the nation and the chosen car. The color we also need to go over and pass in the correct parameters. So again, before we go over and press the start button in this case, we need to pass in all the correct or the right informations. But before we do that, we also want to go to the nation2 input field. In here, we gonna add the script input name and drag in the input field 1 in this case from the nation2 input. So we have two different input possibilities and use that actually. Okay, so now we have the inputs done. Again, here also the start button will get the direct connection to the game manager and will take or save all the infos once we are pressing the start button. And also later on there will be maybe another where you go and load a new scene, for example, which is your play field. Okay, so with that said, we need to go into our rotate platform script. And in here, when we are choosing or having already set a click character, the click character is going to be our car we want to take or want to save. So whenever we are clicking on that, we want to save the particular click character, of course. So we want at this point pass in the parameter into the game object itself. So what we say is, at first we need a reference again to our save load script. So we create that once again. So private save load data, and I call this one again SD. And I can also go over and go into the start, for example, in here, and get the save load script. So what I do is I just copy over that part from the input name script and place this in the rotate platform script into the start function in here. So we get the reference directly from the game manager and get the reference to the save load data script. And what we can do is, once we have the click character, we can say sd dot chosen car in this case is going to be equal to the clicked character, the dot name. Oops. So this is also a string, so we can save the chosen car into the string. So whenever we are clicking on that, we will save that data, or basically send that string value into our save data holder. That's pretty much it. Now also we need to do that stuff for the color. To tint, not just tint, but when we are tinting that by clicking on any of that particular buttons, we need to store that color, whatever the color is, and send that particular color into the save load data too in our car color string, a car color holder in here. This is a color. So what we do is, again, in the rotate platform, we know that the object script is going to be called whenever any button is pressed of our color buttons. So what we can do is, we can go and under the button color is set, and the mesh renderer has done all of the magic in here. We can say this SD car color is going to be equal to the button color. Gonna save. Let's get back to Unity and see if there are any errors. Doesn't seem so. So let's check the car color field in here and the chosen car. So that's the very first thing I want to test. I start my game, choose any of my nations, select the car, which is LP car right now, and as you can see, that LP car got written down in here in the chosen car. So it's going to be kind of saved. And also when I have choose the truck or choose the bus, it will automatically store it in there. Now, when I press one of that buttons in here, you can see also the color is going to be stored, or basically sent at first, into the save load data script. And that's what we want. We want to know that color. Also, since we know that the basic of the color or of the car color is going to be equal to white. If it's for you red, then make sure you use red. The best might be that the car color is in the very start already set to the first chosen or the first possible color. In my case, it's going to be white. So what I can do is I can say car color is going to be equal to color.white. And you can also take in or use any RGB values. It doesn't really matter. Instead of the color, you can also change color to color 32. It will also work, since color itself uses values between 0 and 1, but color 32 uses RGB values like you know them maybe from Photoshop. Okay, so what I do is I don't have a black in the first part in here, but I will have white at first, as you can see. So there will be not the wrongest color ever be stored when we are pressing the start button on our game. Okay, so with that said and done, we have those two informations already in, and in the main menu handler we can do the same. We can, if you have, I don't know, whatever name you want to give them, when we are hitting that particular game object or that nations, we can send in the same data into the save load script. So again, we take a private save load data, call this one SD once again. We can go into the start function and copy the first line from here once again, and pass or paste that into the main menu handler, into the start function itself. So we have the connection again to our SD game object or our game manager object. And then what we can pass in is any value we want. So we can say SD dot, and in this case it's going to be the nation. It's going to be equal to, and now you can call it whatever you want. Maybe Europe. In this case, if it's the first continent, or it can be anything. And in the second one, we can say this is going to be Asia. I don't know. I'm gonna save this. And I'm selecting one of those once I can, like this. You can see I choose Asia, but if I don't like Asia, I can also go and select the green one, and I will have the nation Europe. So this can also be saved. And again, the input field is also going to get loaded when we basically want to save that when we are pressing the start button. So what I can do is I go to the start button 1, which is the nation 1 input field, add a new on-click event and drag in the nation we are currently in, or the nation input field, and take the input name script and say set name. So set name will pass in the information as we have created in here into the save load data script. Okay, the same can be done in the other start button for the other nation. So in here again we take the no, that's not the input field, sorry. In the start button we take the nation 2 input panel, take input name, and again set name. So whenever we now go and press the start button, we will save all the data into our player prefs. So don't forget to save the scene, so otherwise you might have to redo everything when something is going to crash. And now when I go and change my car or choose my car, choose a name and maybe like Bob, and then I press, gonna go to the game manager. As you can see, everything is set up except the driver name. So I have Bob in there, and then I have the nation Asia. Will have in just a second name Bob, have chosen the car, and the color is black. Now I press start. And what is happening is Bob is going to get implemented in the save data too. But I believe we need to change the order. Yes, that's better, I believe. We better change the order of the infos. So instead of saving the data first before I can set the name, otherwise I might not have any name set in this case. I'm not 100% sure if that is possible, so I go over and just change them back. So I got rid of the game manager in the first place and took it in the second place. And the same for the second start field. I'm gonna select the first one, press the minus, press the plus, take the game manager object, choose the function save data load, and save info. Okay. Now when I want to make sure that everything works right now. So what I need to do is in my newly created scene, when I start a new level or whatever, I want to make sure that the correct bus, truck, or car is instantiated. So instead of going through all of that, I just go over and create a new button and call the load function from our currently selected or currently already saved data. So what I can do is I go over into my main panel, as I am already in, and add a new button. And this button can be, where is it? Can be anywhere. Maybe under the start button. And I call that button or give it a text like create a car. So when I press that button, I can also go and hit the best fit in here. Same for the other text. If it's not really good visible for the player, for example, you can also go in and change the color again from that ugly gray to a fullish black. And now when I press or would press the create a car the create car button, I want to instantiate or create that car. So I create a new on-click event for that particular button, drag in the game manager object, which is holding all the information. Then I go to the save load data script and load the function load info. Now let's press play. At first I can go and start the game, so I can go over and do that, select the car, choose a blue color for example, and name myself Hello You. So what I do is I press the start button, but instead of loading a new level, I go just back until I see my create a car button and press on that. Oh, there's an unknown exception error. Maybe I have a typo somewhere, so I'm gonna check this one pretty quick. Yes, I have a small typo in here. It's not RBGA, it's RGBA. So make sure you have that. Don't forget to save, and hopefully it's working right now. I'm gonna test this one out once again. But since I already have saved the data, I could or should be able to create a new car. And something has been happened, and as you can see, there is my car clone. Let's see where it is in my game. There it is. It should be at 000, so double click that. And here, as you can see, this car is going to be blue. It has the correct color since it was a tintable object. Everything else in here is not tagged with that, so they don't get affected, and wouldn't anyways, since they wouldn't care in the next or newly created scene. And it is not renamed since we clamped this one out once again, but since it is called or tagged Tint Me, the stuff is going to get tinted. Also in the game manager, or actually everything will be named like that, so you can now read all the data you want and show that on a specific, I don't know, canvas for example, like the name, the nation, and all the other things. And pass in that parameter just in any text output, I don't know, or show any nations, I don't know, whatever you want to. If you have questions about that, feel free to ask me. Otherwise, that's it for the whole tutorial. Thanks for watching the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thumb this video up if you like it, and feel free to become my patron or donate by using PayPal to support me and my channel in the future. All links will be below in the description. See you in the next tutorial. Bye bye.